This is very exciting. Hi, this is Dale Peterson, and welcome to the Unsolicited Response Show. Well, we're back in the swing of things now that S423 is over. Thanks again to all of you that attended. And now you're going to see me get back to my normal content schedule, which will be for a while at least. It'll be Mondays, one of the S423 videos, Tuesday, my article, Wednesday, an episode of this show, the Unsolicited Response Show, Thursday, another S423 video, and then Friday, my ICS Security Friday news and notes. But I'm guessing you're tired of hearing me talk about S4, so I'm going to get right to our guests. Liz, can you bring our guests up now? I'm bringing in two gentlemen from 1898 and Company. Matt Morris, he is the managing director there, and Mark Mattei, who is the director of managed security services, kind of an important title these days with your recent announcement. But welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for bringing us on. We appreciate it.
Well, we're recording this, I guess, on the 23rd. So a week ago, you were in Miami Beach and you announced 1898 announced that you were getting into or expanding into the managed security services business with an OT focus. Mark, since that's kind of what your title is, do you want to give us maybe a 1 or 2 minute, don't filibuster too long, but a 1 or 2 minute overview of what the announcement was?
Sure, absolutely. So 1898, is the consulting arm for Burns and McDonnell. And basically, we saw the need for all of our critical infrastructure clients to have a capability to get the 24/7 threat monitoring and detection capabilities that they needed. So with that, we went ahead and said, hey, we need to provide this to all of our clients because it's really what's needed in the market. So, from a 24/7 perspective, we're providing the managed threat protection and response capabilities that our clients are really asking for.
And how does this, and Matt, I know you kind of deal with the interaction between Burns and Mac and 1898 and Company. Is this associated with anything at Burns and Mac, or is this an 1898 only offering?
It's a 1898 and Co. Only offering, but I mean, when I say that, realize that 1898 and Co. we are Burns and McDonnell.
Right.
We're synonymous, so that there's not any real difference between the two. It's just that we're our brand. So just like from a Burns and McDonnell family perspective, we've got all of our design, build, construction. That's the broader Burns and McDonnell. That's what their focus is. We also have construction companies that are a part of Burns and McDonnell, and they have their own construction brands. So, again, they're a part of Burns and McDonnell, but they're a separate brand. And we're kind of a digital and cyber as well as management consulting brand of Burns and McDonnell. So we're really all part of the same big team.
Okay. Well, let's dive into this, and I'll let you guys decide who answers this one. But you've got this monitoring program. Monitoring is part of this, and you're focused on OT networks, I'm assuming. What exactly are you monitoring? Are you monitoring firewalls? Are you monitoring switches, network traffic? When someone gets this monitoring, what are you actually looking at?
Yeah, the main piece is security threats. So we stem from all of our partner capabilities: Claroty, Dragos, Armis, CrowdStrike. We do the threat detection pieces using their platforms, as well as have the capability for ingestion of security logs, firewalls, whatever security devices clients have in their environment, and we bring those back into our MSS infrastructure, and we do the triaging of those security events, and then we escalate those incidents to the clients for the things that they need to be aware of immediately.
So if a client, you mentioned a number of products there, people are pretty familiar with, Claroty, Dragos, Nozomi, Armis, and such. Is there an 1898 and Co. product on top of those that's bringing in the log files and doing, almost like a SIM type product that you're using on top of that? And if so, is it homegrown or one that you're using from somebody else?
Yeah, so we have the ability to collect the security events and remotely manage those capabilities that I mentioned. But we bring those security events into our backend infrastructure, and we've partnered with Elastic and Swimlane as well to create an MSS platform where we can do orchestration and automation, as well as use the SIM capability from Elastic to do the management for all our clients.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that's one of the things I've been looking at. I follow the detection market pretty closely, and I can't say it's impossible, but they're not really looking at much beyond traffic that they're monitoring or scanning that they're doing in terms of bringing in outside. Most of the firewall integration I see, for example, is more sending commands to the firewalls to change rules, as opposed to taking things in and saying, hey, we're seeing this IP address pound our firewall. Please correlate that with these events. So you're doing that through Elastic and Swimlane and this infrastructure you've built that's on top of these others.
That's correct. And in reality, we can take on all the security device logs. We have the ability to manage many platforms, but really security logs from any security device we can ingest, and then we have the detection capability in the Elastic SIM. We continue to build our detections to support the ingestion of all of those different security devices.
Okay, so you bring all this data in. Are you bringing in IT data? Are you bringing in data from the enterprise into this solution?
Yeah, so we have the capability to do that as well. So our focus is our critical infrastructure clients and really the OT and ICS side. But if our clients have the need for us to do a combined detection capability with their IT side, we can bring in the Windows logs and the IT firewalls and any of those logs as well to do the detections on top of that.
Well, if you're really trying to do it, you need some sort of correlation either between the two entities doing it, because what we've seen, most of these attacks have come through the enterprise, right? So that's where it starts. Eventually it makes its way, if it's successful, into OT. Oftentimes it's stopped before it gets there, but you would want to know such things, I would think.
Absolutely, and really, it's a key. We're of course very collaborative. So any client who has an IT provider do an internal IT, we are definitely open to share threat intelligence as well as real-time detection information with the IT OT side in order to make sure we're protecting our clients.
Now, Matt, I'm sure you were probably pitched on this, and they said, hey, we'd like to do this, and this is what it'll cost, and this is what the business will be. And maybe you had to pitch it up to some people in Burns and Mac. There's other people that do this, right? Deloitte, for example, does this. So you have a number of consulting companies that do this. To a certain extent on their own platform, some of the vendors that you partner with do this. And now we're seeing ICS vendors themselves do this. Siemens has quite a similar type of offering. How would you differentiate what you're offering compared to what's out there now?
Really good question. So there's generally, you just kind of touched on, I would call it 3 different types of scenarios that we would really frequently run into. The first is kind of your IT managed security services vendor, right? So there's a bunch of those out there who, rightly or wrongly, they don't really understand this equipment, and in many cases they don't understand the underlying process very well. And we've heard, at least in some cases, that they'll say, "Oh yeah, we cover OT as well," but in fact they don't know what they don't know. And so the second something goes sideways, and they're coming in, they're trying to either it's the detection itself, or they're trying to do instant response, and they realize they don't understand this environment very well, and that doesn't go over very well. So that's been some feedback that we've gotten from a number of different clients, and quite frankly, part of the reasoning why we decided to enter into this market was that, working with a lot of different clients and finding out that they're just not getting, the market response has just not been what they're really seeking. The second is more along the lines of what you just said, which I would call, just generically, I would just call them OT focused OEM platforms. And I used to work for one of those. I used to work for Siemens for a long time before I came over to here. Further back, when I worked for Cisco, I actually partnered with a lot of them as well. The Rockwells of the world, the Honeywells of the world, et cetera. Now, the difference with them is at least they understand, they are OT focused. They understand the space that we're working in, and they understand at least their own systems very well. So that side of it is not as much of an issue. However, usually when you go into these environments, whether you're talking about a generation plant, or you're going into a transmission substation, or you're going into a manufacturing plant, it doesn't matter kind of where you are. Most of these environments are multi-vendor systems, right?
Yep.
And many times there's a lot of those. And so if you're really good at your own gear, but you're not very good at everything else, you're still kind of missing the market, and you're really not helping the client that well. And so that's kind of the issue on that front. The product vendors, again, some of them offer some similar capabilities. Not I would say not exactly what we do, but there again, I think the uniqueness that we can kind of bring to the table, and I think that was kind of the realization that we had at some point, was that, man, the market is just missing the response here. And because we have this huge heritage, right? Burns and McDonnell has been designing, building, constructing critical infrastructure environments for 125 years. So you better believe we understand how these things are designed, built, and operated. Kind of having that realization, having the traditional consulting side of the business, and just talking with our clients a lot, it made an immediate sense to us to jump in, because this is a space that we know very, very well. And if something's happening within somebody's environment, in some case, whether we need to swivel chair around and grab an engineer that designs environments that look just like this, or in some cases we're swivel chairing around to grab someone who might have actually designed this exact facility that we're sitting at, that is a luxury that I think it'll be really hard to replicate.
Well, I know that some of the people, and I asked you the question, some of the people that you mentioned there would point out, I hear, from example, Siemens, will say that they have the team that does this has expertise across, but I think that's a valid point. Will they be as independent and as skilled and such? Mm-hmm. This industry is very new in terms of focusing on OT. Mm-hmm. And I'm old enough that I remember back in the early 2000s when similar services were just being introduced quite successfully. And then I can't remember if it was Code Red or Slammer hit. And all of a sudden we had an incident that had all the people that had been paying month after month, year after year for this service, they all called at once. And there was a capacity issue. We really haven't had our OT world tested on this, but how are you prepared to deal with 100 customers needing incident response all at once? I assume you're hoping to get up to that level of sales and much higher.
You want me to take that, or you Mark?
No, go ahead.
So it's a great question, and one that you can better believe that our chief risk officer has asked us, and that we've had to game plan and actually go through. One of the things I'll say, that we're talking about managed security services, we're talking about managed threat protection. There is the other side of it, which is incident response. And so as we're looking at incident response, that's one of those things that kind of the beauty of that is that it is very scaled, right? And we believe very much so that incident response is something that should be delivered kind of at a local level, like where people live, work, and play sort of thing. And so as we are setting up these contracts, and we're hiring and continuing to grow the team, we've been doing that for a long time anyway. But we are making sure that we are getting those localized resources that are right there with the client, so that they're able to go out and facilitate those needs. It's a really good question. Where we stand right now, as you rightly said, we have not ever seen anything like that. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. But I think the best that we can do is to make sure that just from a risk register perspective, that we're getting closer to the clients. We have people that can do more immediate response, and that we're building our systems in a way that's highly scalable. Doesn't matter how many clients that you stack on top. So,
and I guess you've got, as I wanted to get into this, you have different levels of service, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how you price this thing. Is it by IP or amount of network traffic, or site license or something like that? But you have a certain level of difficulty ramping up if you're monitoring and you're alerting people. If you say this happened, we're going to send you alert, and you're going to get the data, and maybe you can call us up and ask some questions. But then I was reading through what you put out. You also talk about proactive hunting and conducting active response. And certainly the scalability of active response is a lot more difficult than what can be highly automated in terms of looking at the data and sending out things and maybe answering the phone. So maybe, as to put this in the form of a question, how are you looking at these services, Mark? Are they broken down? Like, can you get monitoring, or you can get monitoring plus active response, monitoring plus active response and incident response? And then what's the pricing structure on something like this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So great question on as far as separating out the services. So from a managed threat protection and response capability, that, as you mentioned, it includes hunting and it includes our active response. The active response part of that service is providing the remediation guidance, setting up rules of engagement with the capabilities we have. So if we're managing a firewall and we can put a block in based on rules of engagement, then we would put a block in. If we're managing their CrowdStrike, then we would be able to contain hosts as they become infected, as an example. The secondary piece is our emergency incident response really is a retainer. And that provides the capability for us to, as Matt mentioned, to have the folks basically assembled, prepared to do emergencies. But as they're doing that, they help prepare the clients with incident response plans and playbooks, which is all part of prepaid hours from the retainer. So this way, if there's an emergency, our clients, based on the way we're providing the services, will have, I'll call it a leg up, because we have been providing proactive incident response services for them, as well as are prepared in a retainer situation for that emergency.
And then in terms of sizing things, do you base it based on IP address, number of physical sites, or what's kind of the parameter that sizes what it's going to cost them?
Yeah, I guess it's really two pieces, and it's not really complex. It's the size, right? Number of assets that we're covering, whether it's a plant, and then really it's the number of security devices that we're managing. So if we, as an example, there are eight manufacturing plants or 8 refineries that we're managing for a client, and they each have a security device, say a Dragos collector or a Claroty CTD server, then we'll price it based on, okay, we're managing this many devices, and your number of assets is this high for our monitoring service.
I should have asked this early on, and when you mentioned it, you mentioned a lot of these vendors. Does 1898 envision themselves installing these systems, or is this you going to someone who already has this in place, and then you're going to support it after that?
In reality, it's a full life cycle, right? So us being partnered with our partners, it's a little bit ironic, but us being partnered allows us to basically help them do the analysis and the solutions engineering of what capabilities they need, where they would get the best bang for the buck for that technology, and actually, quite frankly, which technology it would be, whether it should be a Dragos, an Armis, a Claroty, or some other technology. We do quite a bit of bake-offs between the different technologies. And then we, full service, we'll do the deployment and integration, whether it's at a refinery or whether it's on an oil rig in the middle of the Gulf, right? We have all of the trained PPE and expertise for all our consultants to be able to do that deployment and integration in whatever critical infrastructure organization there is. And we have that background and have all the safety pieces in mind, which many other folks don't have that capability to do. So we have the capability to deployment, and it stems right in. We help them do the solutioning, we do the purchasing, we help them do the deployment integration, and then we take on their 24/7 operation. So it's a business outcome solution, turnkey, if you will.
And just one thing I'd like to add there, Dale, if I could. Even well before the managed security services, you're probably familiar with the term EPC, right? So from a Burns and McDonnell engineering perspective, we do a lot of EPC work, which is engineering, procurement, and construction. And so it's, for those that may not be familiar with that term, EPC really just means if I'm a utility, I won't name any names here, but we do this a lot. If this utility is going to go build anything, whether it's renewable generation, whether it's a coal-fired plant, natural gas, whatever it is, they want a new generation plant. We're gonna build it, and we're gonna do everything from site selection all the way, procure all the components, bring all the integration together, do all the supply chain. We're gonna do everything: design, build, and construct this thing from scratch. Same thing with substations, same thing with whatever the equipment is. So in a lot of ways, we are seen as 1898, we're seen as a security EPC. And so we work with clients who's, and this all goes back to supply chain. They only want to have so many, they want to have the tightest number of vendors that they can, of trusted vendors. And so they come to us, they're already doing this. And so, they're already coming to us with a variety of different needs. And so managed security services was sort of just a logical extension of that. And we have this partner ecosystem. It's pretty extensive. But one thing that shouldn't be overlooked from a managed security services perspective is that we really want to be open. And you'll see that with just about everything you see with 1898 and Co. Is that we're all about open, and we're all about standards as much as possible. And so, one of the things that I've not liked about the market for a long time is that usually with a managed security service, and again, this doesn't matter if you're talking about IT, OT, OEM, whatever, they sort of pick a vendor and they ride that vendor, right? They kind of ride that partner or that vendor, and that's what you're getting. If you get that managed security service, you're getting that vendor, period. For us, that wasn't that great of a fit because, and without getting into all the specifics around this, there are certain environments that Dragos is pretty well fit for, and there's other environments that Claroty fits really well, right? And so forth. So anyway, so we wanted to open that up. We wanted to make it a little bit more broad than that, so that people have a choice. If they don't have a choice, if they don't have it, to your question, in some cases, they may already have the product. They may have already bought it themselves, and we can integrate it in and manage it for them. In some cases, they're coming to us and asking the question, well, who should I use? And we can help with that. But we want to give them additional choices on that front. And over time, we're starting out with 3. It'd be nice if we could do the entire industry. We won't be able to do that, obviously. There's no way we'd be able to do that. But we'll have a finite number, and we'll stick to that, and they'll have some choices around that. But I think as long as we're representing a huge, portion of the market from a monitoring detection perspective, I think that gives them the most options.
So what are the 3 now? Because I had heard 5 before.
No,
what are the 3 you're starting with?
Yeah, so right now it's Dragos, Claroty, and Armis.
Okay.
And then there's more than likely. I mean, from a current partner ecosystem perspective, we're much broader than that. We have,
Okay.
Tenable, the Nozomis, the Tenables, et cetera. So anyway, and Forescout and others. So over time, I think you'll see us expand that out a little bit further, but we're not going to get crazy with that.
I see. So you have more partners. The 3 is on the MSSP side.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Well, and for
Matt,
the end, and just quick for the endpoint capability, we manage CrowdStrike as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, you've got. I understand what you're saying there, but that must lead to a lot of interesting conversations, because you're talking about people that are kind of have been in a 5-year blood feud between each other. And let's say you have some large utility that decides to put in Claroty, then some of the others aren't going to be very happy, or vice versa. And then you also are in a situation where, to a certain degree, you're competing against these people as well. I mean, for example, Dragos offers a lot of incident response. If you were to say prior to you announcing this, that probably the 2 big incident responders in OT are Dragos and Mandiant.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those retainers are pretty lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that being sustainable going forward, that you're going to be able to retain good relationships with directly competing vendors? When, as you said, sometimes customers ask you what they should do. In that case, it's one thing if the customer says, I'm only doing this if you support Claroty, or I want to get Dragos, or I want to get Nozomi. But if they say 1898 and Co., who should we use? That's a difficult partner conversation for all but one.
Yeah. Well, now I would say it's, to be honest with you, I would say it's a lot easier than you might think. So having, even before the managed security service, having a larger partner ecosystem like we do, is something that we've gotten really familiar with this. And so, and what we're really seeing, I think this is quite wise. This is just Matt's opinion, but we see that a lot of the vendors that are out there are really focused on the product. And I think that's wise, because at some point, and you know this very well, Dale, at some point there's going to be an exit strategy for some of these vendors. And when it comes to going public or whatever their exit strategy is, they're going to get a much higher multiple in a product situation versus a services situation. And so I think a lot of them have realized that. And because of that, most of them are very, very partner centric. In fact, most of them, I won't say all of them, but most of them won't even have the conversation in most cases with the client. They want their partner to have the client conversation, and to kind of carry the water on that front. So they are going overboard to be partner centric, which we really appreciate. So there are some pockets here and there where things get a little bit more interesting, but I think everybody in this industry are doing it for many reasons, some of which are altruistic. And I think we kind of consider ourselves all part of one big family. So we're usually, sometimes, to be fair, sometimes it's like brothers and sisters. We have to bang on each other a little bit, have some arguments and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, we're still part of the same family, and we tend to work that out pretty well.
Well, it's something we'll watch and keep an eye on. I will second that. I'm seeing a lot of these companies that you're working with try to push things through partners or channels or things of that nature.
Big time.
I would say, again, I don't touch enough deals to say I have a good view of, in the top 200 deals in the last 2 years, what's happened. But some of the deals, when I'm involved with RFIs and RFPs with asset owners, the partners have cost companies jobs or cost companies sales just because they weren't as good. The ones that went direct were much better than the ones that went through partners. Now, I would imagine 1898 might be a very attractive partner for that reason, because you speak the language and work with this. But I think we're still in my own view is we're still in the early days of channels for this type of product, that the channels aren't quite ready to really deal with them. They need a lot of hand holding with perhaps a few exceptions like yourselves.
Yeah, I think that's very well stated. Yep.
There's one other thing I wanted to touch on before we go, and this is the active nature of what you're proposing to do. Because we know you've been involved with this community and people that build and run things like this for years, they get really nervous with someone making changes to their system, whether that be in their security products, or I saw that you even said you do proactive hunt within your network and find threats, which envisions some level of going in and probing to see if there's problems. Whether it be changing things or probing, Mark, what's been the initial reaction to you doing that? How much pushback are you getting on that?
Yeah, so the hunting capability is really based on the technologies that we're managing. So we're not remotely accessing PLCs or HMIs at the operating system level. We're looking at the security events and the changes that are being made. Right, a lot of activity happens from third parties in the environments that. But the OEMs are just making changes, doing upgrades, and that just gets basically overlooked. One of the key pieces for that is hunting and reviewing all of that activity and assessing whether or not it might be malicious or not. A key piece to our service is tuning, right? I won't get too detailed into the tuning, but there's a lot of folks who say they do monitoring and they'll just take events and send you all the events. But really doing a good job of tuning and understanding the environment from an active role, just like you mentioned, of who's accessing the environment. Are they there on purpose? Is it during a maintenance window? Is it an account that's being used? Is it an admin account that everybody's using? All of these type of things. So our hunting is based on threats, but also architectural and process based type vulnerability. So if they don't have MFA in place, or they don't have some sort of remote access capability, how are they doing that? And what are the ways we can see those types of activity and help them identify when something's malicious or it's just normal activity from an OEM making a change on a PLC, for example?
Okay. Just a couple of quick questions to end. Is it global offering right now or North America only at this point?
Yeah, so we're so it's a global offering. We're focused in North America, but there's we have a lot of clients that are global, headquartered in North America. So we have the capability for global.
And then, are you actually doing it now? Is it live? Do you have customers? Do you have the SOC up and running?
Absolutely. So we've actually had clients for a while. We specifically chose the launch time frame for S4 to make sure we had basically a large launch event to provide the visibility of what we were doing. But we have live clients. We've been active with those clients for a while now. So.
And is there some sort of critical mass you need to hit before this makes sense? I mean, this if you do this right, and again, I saw companies in the 2000s that didn't do this right, but if you do it right, you have to build up a significant capability to be able to service clients, and then you can leverage that over an increasing number of clients. How long before you think this becomes, quote, a success? Do you have a timetable for that?
Yeah, so I mean, so we have a timetable for our launch and our trajectory for increases. But I think the key difference between the 2000s and now is the security orchestration and automation capabilities that are now provide us a greater capability to scale and be efficient than they used to be. Right? It used to be you had to have eyes on glass on everybody's individual pane of glass. Now with the ingestion and all of the orchestration capabilities, we can be much more efficient and effective to be able to scale and add clients fast and being effective with onboarding those clients.
Okay. Well, let me ask you one question. I'll throw out kind of a wild card question for you. You were both down in Miami Beach, and you talked to a lot of people in the industry, probably a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces. Was there anything that surprised you that you said, I was surprised that this was an issue, or I was surprised that this wasn't an issue, or I was surprised that they were asking me these kind of questions? Or was it just, kind of more of the same of what you expected in terms of where the industry is at and what it's caring about?
I'll throw one out there on that front. I think it was mostly what we have come to know and love, I would say, about S4 and about the people coming in and having that dialogue. One comment I heard that you might be pleased to hear, or not, Dale, but I'll share it anyway. I did hear people talking about how obviously it's big, one of the biggest events, or I guess the biggest event that we've had to date. But they talked a little bit about how they felt that the level of discourse and just the topics themselves had kind of elevated themselves a little bit, which I thought was a very positive step. Not that we should never get in the weeds and that sort of thing, but S4 in the past can definitely get very, very detailed and get a little at times in the weeds. But I heard a lot of people talking in a very positive manner about some of these more CISO level conversations, and I think that's a welcome change from my perspective.
Well, and that might mean that the industry is maturing a little bit, that they're realizing they have to have those kind of conversations to be effective. Mark, and I'm not talking so much about the event, but just you're around all these people, you're around 1,000 people. Is anything that surprised you in terms of what they care about or don't care about?
Yeah, so I mean, I think at large, so I was in the Army for 22 years. I'm a bit altruistic, right? The reason I'm doing this is really to protect critical infrastructure, and it's very encouraging that there's it sounds strange, but that there's so many vendors who are out there trying to provide great capabilities for protecting our critical infrastructure. So it's not like new or but there's just a lot, and there's a lot of focus and a lot of smart people who are now putting their efforts into making our critical infrastructure safer, and that's very encouraging for our community.
Okay, well, that's good. I agree. So we've had Mark Mattei and Matt Morris from 1898 and Company on the show here. Thank you guys for being on, and I want to wish you luck with your new service offering. And I'm really, really curious. Now, I hope, knocking on wood, I hope we don't get a big test, but when that big test comes, and it probably will at some point, I'm really curious to see how not only your company, but how the industry deals with hundreds or thousands of companies needing to deal with something in short order to get operations back up and running. That'll really be the test. And the hope is that something like this will help them do that.